No.
And we're live.
And there we are. Should we leave it for a couple of seconds so those folks on LinkedIn can join us?
Quickly last time.
Boom!
Fed up.
Well, in that case, people, welcome to Hear the People. I'm Glenn Martin, CEO and founder of Never Mind the Job Spec. This is Katrina Collier, my glamorous co-host, author and facilitator and speaker, the Robot Proof Recruiter. And we're here today to talk to our guest about, we truly trust our people? Do we? Do we really trust our people? Over to you, Katrina.
Yes. So welcome, Rebecca Collis, to Hear the People. You are, of course, well, actually, you're going to explain what you do, I think, far better than we are. But what you do at AMS. And also, I don't know if you can hear Banjo just decided to cry while you started talking. He just wants in as well. It's very professional here. Because we ended up having a whole conversation around trust and specifically with your team. So we're going to definitely talk about more about that, which I think is very on topic. But can you tell people what you do?
Okay. Yeah, of course.
Tell us what got you into this recruitment malarkey as well.
Crikey, that was a long time ago. Do we really have to go there? No.
10 years ago, when I fell into recruitment.
2005, I fell into recruitment. I ended up going from retail management, oddly, at Tesco's, which I couldn't stand, by the way. And
not Tesco specifically, that would be retail management.
No, of course, retail management. Never Tesco specifically. Anyway, I wasn't working anywhere in particular. And I've been doing a lot of performance reviews. I've been doing a lot of management of individuals, and I felt like I could deal with the recruitment piece. I'd always liked recruitment, and I ended up working a temp desk at Manpower. That's where I started, as I think a lot of people do, and then realised that temp desk wasn't really fluid. It went really, really well, but I didn't like the ethics of constantly eroding, the pay as well as pushing the client higher. It just didn't suit me. So moved into contract recruitment within the defence sector at Modis, and then moved forward from there. And many, many years. I'm not going to go through my entire career and bore you, so we'll just skip forward to what I do now. I now manage.
I started just before you, so I could do a really long one as well.
Oh, there we go. We could just sit here and make the hour about what did you do.
I know, let's not.
How recruitment's changed.
Yes.
But no, I now, since summer last year, it was June 2021. Was it that right? No, June. Yeah. But lost track of time now. June 2021, I started at AMS now, losing track. And when I started at AMS, I came in as the manager for TA sourcing. So our internal recruitment function that recruits for recruiters, sourcers, BI professionals, anything within the corporate advisory space as well. But the team itself,
within AMS
specifically
itself.
for AMS. Yes, exactly. So we're a global RPO, which most people will be aware of, hopefully. But certainly we do a heck of a lot in terms of embedded solutions, but we coined a new phrase, workforce dexterity. So the idea being that we can move our people around as and when there is needs, there's ebb and flow within all the businesses. Of course, it makes it much easier to not lose good people. So that's, in a very brief nutshell, what I do now.
Which is cool.
Wicked. And on that subject of people, and I just realised at the very top of the show, I completely misread the show title. I just got, we truly trusted our people. I missed out the what if, which is kind of the point of it, is what if we truly trusted our people. So
nobody's going to judge you on that little one.
Exactly.
But, I first want to point out that now 2021 is like the year before last. It's quite extraordinary. We are 4 days into 2020. It's so hard to say, isn't it? Because you go last year and it's like, 18 months already. But obviously you therefore have a remote team, which is where our conversation started around the trust. And of course, I'm just laughing at the moment because everything's, well, we're going into recession. Let's drag everyone back into the office. And people are going, yeah, no. So how did you start building that cohesive team and working on the trust? Had you had a remote team before? Was it all a new experience, or?
In my previous role, the team was fully remote because we recruited globally for NATO. So we had our team members in Macedonia, in the UK, in Belgium. So I was used to that kind of remote vibe. But even with that, there's very different personalities involved. And I think the team that I had before was quite small. When I came into AMS, the team was quite small. And as we all know, in 2021. The rec load was insane. The pressures on the business were mad. There was just nobody could recruit enough recruiters or sources. There was just nobody in the market, and people were getting paid these massively inflated salaries because the government was providing these massive loans to small startups who then subsequently had other problems. But the whole piece about it was we had to get a team that was at the time, I believe, around about 6 people. It was then I was scaling at that time, ready for a push in 2022. And I think we topped out in 2022, in June of 2022, at a team of 29 or so.
Wow.
So we were at one point in 2021, I was bringing on 2 or 3 people a week, it was new starters. So creating the infrastructure around that and working on how do we bring these people on and make them, first of all, feel welcome into the team in the first place. So for me, it starts way back, because you've got to start at the very beginning and understand how those people build a relationship in the first place with you, how you build that initial trust that they understand you and you understand them. And so managing expectations, making sure that we sent out emails prior to them starting, little gift for them before they started, sort of just to make them feel more comfortable, but then also an email the week before telling them, right, okay, this is the time you're starting. This is the person you're going to speak to first. Here's the links to the documents once you've got it in, and here's how you get access to your IT. So having all of those things, and also just checking they've got their technology in time for when they were starting.
Yes.
But
that's
the other
so
thing,
important and so often overlooked, isn't it?
Massively. Or the passwords
it's the
don't
stress
work.
it creates. Actually, in addition to, I've got a great story of somebody doing their onboarding training, and they're still the stress on the Wi-Fi. If the other person was working remotely as well in the other room using the Wi-Fi, they're trying to download an entire operating system on the laptop because the IT department didn't load it, while she's using the other one to stream Zoom. And of course, she said the stress she felt on that first day. She just got so far behind and was like, we forget that. Just the check can create such stress.
I think that is such an important part, is getting it right at the beginning, so it feels like when you're starting, A, you're cared about, B, people know that you're due to start, and C, when you do start, you have that initial point of contact that you speak to somebody very, very quickly who's going to be in your management chain. We also have, for instance, internally, we would allocate a buddy. So that would be somebody who was at a similar kind of level, working in a client account, because my guys don't get exposure to that in the same way. And have them send them an email within the first day, so that they got an introduction email. They know this person's now a point of contact for all my stupid questions. And that was the first thing, was just getting people into the business in a way whereby they weren't worried about not having their equipment. They knew what they were expected to do on the first day. They then got an email telling them what the first week looked like and what they were going to be doing during that period and the trainings, etc. So now, clearly, I'm not going to say all of that stood up the first time I brought somebody in. Because the first time I brought somebody in, I sat there.
I think he might be lying.
It took time to stand up for various things and work out. And I had my little lessons learned log, which was a lovely spreadsheet, which basically said, this was pants, fix it by this date. And that was my start point. But the other thing that I found really interesting was the 6 people or so that were working in the team at the time. They didn't necessarily have that feeling of everybody knew who everybody else was. Even though it was only a team of 6, they weren't aware of the other team members. They didn't know them on a personal level. There wasn't that connection. And so the first thing I thought was really key to do was get them on meetings, short meetings, 3 times a week, and make everybody come. 3-line whip, get everybody in and actually have a conversation. And it wasn't just about the standard, because I think recruitment, you can often be sat on calls whereby it's very transactional, as it was when I was in retail management, right? It's like, where are your gaps? Where's your shrink? It's all about numbers. It's all about, okay, so who are your calls today, etc. I think, again, that's where, for me, if you're recruiting people on behaviours, it's about them trusting those people to be able to execute based on the fact that you've hired them on behaviours. If you've hired them on behaviours, then if they aren't doing something to the performance level you're looking for, very often it comes back to us as leaders to look at, do you have the tools? Do you understand the processes? Have we got anything that's standing in your way? is the admin for this too heavy? And what can we automate that we're not automating already? Because whilst I agree with the whole principle of robo-proof recruiter, as you'll understand,
I have no problem with automation. It's how you use it.
Exactly. And that's the point, is I think people read that book title sometimes and they misunderstand what you're
Oh my
about.
God. Seriously, HR tech vendors, I don't hate you. I hate the way recruiters use your tech. Honestly, I've been not booked for stuff because, like, particularly for like speaking stuff, because they think I'm anti-tech. It's like I'm not. But I think what it comes back to is you've said behaviors a couple of times, and you've also demonstrated a vulnerability, prepared to look and go, oh, I made a mistake. Right, what do I fix next time? And I feel like, and anyone who's heard me rant often enough about this, is we're just not putting enough focus on the humans. We're like, but you've got the tools and you've got the tech and you've got this, but why aren't you behaving this way? You haven't taught me how to behave that way. You haven't taught me what your expectation is of my behavior.
And this is
no
the
idea where that came
fundamental
from. God, that was pretty
profound for 4th of January.
It's 4th of January. Cut that out.
Impromptu plea to vendors to sort of say, look, I can work with you.
No, I meant the bit about the behaviors. We're not, Oh yeah, no, that too, please. Open your mouth. Right, no.
So I was curious, Becca, I was curious in so much as you had this kind of spreadsheet of things that didn't work in terms of the onboarding. And if you think about kind of onboarding as a new employee, that's part of the build of that social contract with the employer. And if certain things don't go particularly well, it kind of raises questions. And I was curious as to whether, and I appreciate we're kind of going back in time a bit, but is there anything that you either really prioritize in onboarding now because you've realized previously where it was maybe a little bit automated or just a little bit maybe more of a tick box exercise actually now is super more valuable, and you realize that from a human-centered perspective, that is absolutely one of the things we need to get right? Because I was just thinking, if the onboarding, like even issuing laptops, getting that out there now, that for some people is a real anchor. That's like, I'm part of the team now, I've got my laptop. Whereas from a tech perspective, they're like, right, let's just issue it, bang, let's get it out. And I just wondered whether there was perhaps things you perceived as maybe straightforward stuff, but you actually discovered was far more important to that person onboarding and actually helped build that kind of trust base.
I think, I mean, certainly as well, having my own onboarding experience relatively recently within AMS, so I knew what it had been like for me. I think the things that were so important to me was, yes, you speak to, you've got the people who are doing your background checks, you've got the people who are doing your employment checks, there's all of that going on. And then you've got the IT team providing you with your IT. And even if you're getting a package from Amazon, as we were sending, of sort of like a little notebook, a pen and a book, just to get people started, then it's still not got that human touch point. So what I decided was really important once I got my management team in, and until that point it was me who was doing it, was sending out those emails. So I actually had a series of, I think it was 3, whereby it was towards end of 3 weeks out, 2 weeks out, I would send the beginning of 2 weeks out, I'm thinking this is right, I would send an email asking them, have you received all of your technology? Have you received all your equipment, etc.? And looking forward to getting you to start. I'll be sending an email next week to sort of talk you through what the first few days look like towards the end of the week, so that they had that human touch point. They have the human touch point with the recruiters as well, who deal with, a lot of the communication throughout the onboarding. But I think, again, because they're not going to be working with the recruiter as they see it directly, they will in actual fact with my team, but they're not feeling that connection with their team yet. And so having their team manager, and when I could hand that out to the team leaders as soon as I could, I did, so that those team leaders were making that first impression and that making that first contact, but also knowing that they've got a call booked into the diary for day one, and that they've got a breakdown of how they're going to make day one work, what time they need to start, what time they're going to finish on day one. That can often be something that just doesn't get communicated, and people are like, well, I'm at my desk at 8 o'clock. What do I do now? And they're trying to log on.
I'm now not working at AMS ever. 8 a.m. is just not happening.
No, I like it.
With you on that one, I was like, 8 a.m.
I'm usually just coming back from, he's just started crying on cue, the dog walk, and then I might meditate for a bit. I might start around 9.
But this is what I love about our environment. This is where it is coming back to that issue of trusting people, is
Yeah.
I'm an early bird. I've always been an early bird. I'm
Yeah.
not that person that's going to be sat into the evening because I need to be down the gym. I need to be,
Yeah.
that's how my focus goes.
Yeah.
Also with a relatively young family, it's the evenings rushing around getting food, taking to clubs and all the rest of it. It doesn't work for me necessarily to work into the evening, but I can usually find time earlier in the morning.
Yeah.
But again, that's another thing that's been really, really key. And I think particularly after when COVID hit, it became really pivotal to people who are in a similar position to me. Now, it might not be kids, it might be something else. There's plenty of reasons why all of us need flexibility. But being able to get out and go on the school run and pick the kids up and drop them off when there was no childcare, and then point them at stuff that they could do so that they wouldn't go completely bonkers at the times when there was no childcare, was really, really key for me, to be able to have that level of autonomy whereby people trust you to get your work done. And this is,
so it's also, instead of going back to the numbers, isn't it? It's the output. So you're getting the work done, and maybe you're getting the work done in 4 hours, you know, in the office, you spread it out over 8, you know, or whatever. But it's that, it is, isn't it? It's autonomy and then the trust with the output, which I think is where we're going.
There's stages to that, though, isn't there? If you think about kind of the process, the initial trust between a kind of a hiring manager and a new team member is, I trust you have the skills and experience to do this job. Then the next point that they want to get to is, I trust you to do this job. And then the third point could almost be, I will offer you the flexibility because I now know you can deliver. I trust you. So, you know, it kind of, and I wonder at what point, if we just led with that kind of that trust from the beginning, like that, offering that flexibility, etc., how different the kind of dynamic and relationship dynamic might be. Danny Lee.
He made me laugh. Sorry, I shouldn't have read Danny's comment in the middle of that. Just anybody watching on LinkedIn, please follow the link over to Crowdcast, and because then we can see your comments. I can't see your comments on LinkedIn. Sorry, just go, Becca. Delaying your reply.
It's a really interesting piece about the, you know, as you were saying, starting with the skills and experience. You see, I would argue that in modern recruitment, it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a senior manager that's going to be engaging with clients at that senior level, doing a lot of commercials, and they haven't had exposure to that, then you're going to have probably an issue with them falling down pretty rapidly. But I think a lot more at the entry level type roles, there is far too much of this idea that we're supposed to be recruiting for people in recruitment. We've been doing this since 2005. Let's recruit for somebody who has a degree. Why? Let's recruit for somebody who has a background in recruitment. Well, no, exactly. But the thing is, a lot of these things are almost put down there as required for people's roles. And I think the first thing is, if you
a requirement for a head of TA.
Say again?
I saw an MBA requirement for a head of TA.
Wow. Okay. That's
impressive.
Handy to understand the business, and I get that, but I wasn't necessarily sure that you need an MBA to do that, but hey ho.
But again, it's that. But for me, this is where it's coming back to that behaviours piece, and I think AMS is leaning quite heavily into looking at behaviours. I think a lot of organisations, when we did this huge, you know, the before times, as we'll call it now, where everyone was recruiting like an absolute, you know, blat. It was just anybody who had a pulse. No, not really, but anybody that had enough of a skill to be able to put them through and say, right, okay, well, they're going to be able to do stuff. And they could say on paper that they've been in recruitment for 6-12 months, you're biting their arm off. The reality is, again, those people, just because they've been in recruitment, didn't mean to say they understood it, didn't mean to say they were good at it, didn't mean to say that they had the behaviours that you would look for. And my interview process was very much about, is somebody innovative, for instance? Because I like people who are innovative. I believe in having creatives and then trying to control the grasshoppers a little bit so they don't shoot off at random angles. But I'd rather have that than a team of people who are just sat there going, push the button.
We need so much more creativity, don't we? Curiosity and creativity.
Curiosity and creativity. And that's why talking about innovation, or talking about when somebody's, even if they hadn't led a team within, or, you know, talking about what they were outside of work. So one of the things that I would ask people about is, outside of work, what are you passionate about? What's your thing? And when you get people onto the subject they're passionate about, they show so many more of their own behaviors, because they'll talk about, well, yeah, I set up this team and actually I was managing this group of people, but there was there was an issue between them because there was friction. And they'll go off a complete tangent and talk about that, which for me gives you much better insight into how they're going to behave when you bring them onto your team. And if you've got the confidence that you've examined and ticked in your own head, right, okay, have I examined all of the behaviors I'm looking for? Yes, I have. And yes, they've provided evidence of the positive. Then when that person does come in, why wouldn't you trust them? Why do they have to earn trust? Why is that necessary for anybody in a relationship? Why is that necessary that we don't start off with, right, I'm assuming that I brought you on and I have confidence in my process, which means that I trust that I've recruited the right person. So why don't we trust at the outset?
So old school fixed mindset, is it not?
Yeah. Oh, and
yeah.
No, sorry, we're both so excited. No, do you know what Sue Ingram? You've seen Sue Ingram's talk. She talks about this all the time. We take this person who's a fabulous engineer, and then we promote them to be manager of the engineering team, and we don't train them how to lead. That's why. That's a lot of the trust issue as well. We just promote people.
Yeah, and we assume that somebody, just because they've, for instance, it happens with all areas for me in recruitment, but also in other businesses, is we say, right, okay, so promotion is management of people. Not everybody who is really good at recruitment is going to be good at managing people. They're just not. But they are going to be really, really good at producing that individual contributor capability. Yeah. And yet we cut people off at the knees if they can't be managers, because that's the logical next step. A bit like going a little bit off tangent, but it's like this program in life of, you get through school, you get through college or university, you get a good job, you get a dog, then you get a partner, then you get the partner, then you get the dog, then you have the baby, then you have the nice house, then you have the nice car, and then you go, why am I so frustrated? Because I'm not happy. Because you've tried, you've done all the things that you're supposed to do, but you're still not fitting. No, exactly. And I think that's the other piece, is understanding the individuals that we're recruiting. And I think a lot of the time businesses simply don't take the time to understand the individual needs and how they might be met by the business whilst not losing anything on the other side, because businesses need to make money. We need to be commercial. Let's not make, if we're not successful, we can't employ people. But if we're going to employ people, it's then understanding, okay, so what are their needs that are different from somebody else's? Can we accommodate those? If so, how do we accommodate those? And I think that's the other piece for me about I know inclusion isn't necessarily the subject we're really referring to today, but
it is though, isn't it?
It's all part of the same game. But it is part of the trust for me, because how can they trust you if you don't actually demonstrate that you're a trustworthy human?
Which I think is gained by going back, like we said before, to the vulnerability, the openness, the being prepared to say, oh, I fucked that up, didn't I? What have I learned from it? Let's go forward. Sorry, I had to throw that in. By the way, really interesting. I have so many times said, I am never going to manage a team. And people go, oh, you're a leader in recruitment. I'm going, I'm a what? I mean, I really object to the word. But I do think there are different ways to inspire people without actually physically having a team, who I would totally kill. I just couldn't do it. Danny Lee, you're absolutely right. Everyone should just stop at 10 dogs.
Yes.
There'd be no children left in the world to support us in our old age, but it's a nice thought.
I think the piece around trust really came to the forefront during the pandemic, though, didn't it? Because it forced a lot of leaders to change the way that they thought about leadership. And obviously a lot of these leadership styles were ingrained or based on in-person interaction. And now suddenly you didn't have that kind of day-to-day kind of eye over the team. And you had to kind of pivot and look at different ways of assessing their actual output. So I think, the lockdown period probably really started to sort of illustrate how key trust is, not just in terms of the skills and experience, but the trust in terms of somebody to deliver against their I guess the pieces they own within their role. And then on the flip, employees were like, well, actually, I now want you to trust me to continue to work this way post-pandemic. So this whole piece around, this whole conversation around, and as Katrina mentioned at the top of the show, it's kind of almost like, okay, let's get people back into the office now.